Hi everyone, I'm Susan Mulvihill and welcome back to my garden. On March 10th I wrote a garden column about raised bed gardening, which I absolutely love. And you can find it by going to my blog at susansinthegarden.com. Now back then I had hoped to also shoot a video showing you how to build a simple raised bed. But of course my garden was buried in snow, so that wasn't even an option. Well, today I'm going to show you how to build raised beds because they are absolutely wonderful. We have 26 raised beds, which gives you just an idea of how much I love them. Most of them are 10 inches tall. They're 3 feet wide by 8 feet long. We do have 2 raised beds that we grow our raspberries in, and they are 3 feet wide by 16 feet long. And then we have 3 extra raised beds that are 4 feet wide by 16 feet long. They are so terrific. Now last year, this row of beds started to really deteriorate, as you can see. And so it's time for us to replace this row. We have new lumber, and that's what we're going to work on today. Now before we get started, I wanted to talk with you briefly about the type of wood we use. We use untreated lumber. So if you go to a lumber yard, you're going to see things like pine, fir, or larch. That is what we use. I do not like to use pressure-treated wood or any kind of wood that has been treated with a chemical coating. And that's because I worry that the coating could leach into the soil and that the vegetable roots could take it up. And so I prefer to err on the side of caution. Now other types of wood you could use would be things like cedar or redwood. They both weather really well, they last a long time, but they are quite a bit more expensive, so it's a matter of what your budget will allow. In our case, we're using 2x10s, and they generally last about 10 to 12 years. So I feel like they last a good time and they're a good value for our garden. One last thing I wanted to mention is that raised beds can be any size you want as long as they're not so wide that you have to kneel or step on the soil in order to tend the plants growing within them. And that's because compacted roots on plants is the #1 reason they fail to thrive. So you want to keep the soil in the beds nice and loose all season long. The first thing you want to do is cut out your boards. And so we have really liked the 3 foot by 8 foot bed, but remember that you can make it any size you want. And so I've got 2 8 foot long boards cut here, and I also have 2 3 foot long boards. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we assemble our beds using 3-inch long decking screws. It's not a good idea to use nails because they can easily pop out at the joints. So definitely use some screws. To make the bed assembly easy, we like to pre-drill the holes on the short pieces of the beds. And also for a 10-inch tall piece of wood, we like to use 5 screw holes in the end. Well, here's the first raised bed all made. And the thing I wanted to point out is, first of all, this is definitely a 2-person job. And also, you can either assemble your bed in place where it's going to go or assemble it elsewhere and then move it. But these beds are very heavy when they're all put together, so make sure you have some good help. Now the bed is in place, and of course we're retrofitting the new beds into where the old beds were, so we have a little bit of soil to move around. But the first thing you want to do is to check the bed for being square, and that's by taking a tape measure and measuring from the outside corner on one end to the outside corner of the other end.
105 3/4.
Okay. We have a little bit of soil in the way here. There we go.
105 3/4.
Wow, that's amazing. So the next thing is to measure the bed for being level. And so we want to see if the bed is level from end to end. Wow, that's level. And then we're also going to check it side to side just to make sure that it's also level. And it looks like it needs to come up a little bit, so we'll adjust that. It's important to have it level because when you're watering the raised bed, you certainly don't want soil to wash over the sides of the bed. Okay, this bed is just about finished. I've leveled out the soil in here, but because the old beds used to be just 8 inches tall and these ones are 10 inches tall, I obviously need a little more filler for the beds. And for me, that means add in organic materials. So that would be things like organic compost, grass clippings from a lawn that hasn't been treated with weed and feed, or shredded leaves. All of these are good. Now, if you don't have enough soil to fill your new raised bed, you can certainly get something from a landscape supply company. And sometimes they call it raised bed mix, garden mix, three-way mix, something along those lines. But what you need to know is the soil you get from them is really not terribly fertile, and so you want to add in organic soil amendments in order to increase the fertility and the life in the soil. That's really important. Now I want to show you one more thing. Now chances are you've noticed these white things on the outsides of our raised beds and you're wondering what those are all about. Well, we like to be able to put covers over some of our crops, and so I need some type of a support system in order to hold hoops that will in turn hold floating row cover, bird netting, or something like that. So these are just 10-inch tall lengths of PVC sprinkler pipe, and they are attached and secured to the side of the bed by a metal clamp. They are put at 2-foot intervals down the length of the bed on either side, and then our hoops fit into them perfectly, and that holds the covers. So of course on the new beds, they're going to get these as well. Since we're really good about rotating our crops every single year, we never know which beds are going to need covers. And so this way, if they're always on the outsides of every raised bed, then we can put something in any bed and know that it could be covered if it had to be. Well, 1 bed down, 5 more to go. I hope this was interesting and helpful, and I do hope that you're going to put in a raised bed garden because they are awesome. See you next week.